I had driven long enough to know the language of the road. The squeal of brakes, the hiss of skidding tires, the cough of an engine clawing up a grade. But that sound, on that night, was nothing I'd ever heard before. Thin, torn, sharp, like a soul being scraped raw across the pavement. I was Caleb Morris, 42, a man who had spent more than a decade behind the wheel of the highway, pushing through the cold, wet miles of I-70 in Colorado. Rain poured as if the sky itself had cracked open. Wipers beat a cruel rhythm on the windshield. The rare streetlight bled into puddles, glowing like the half-shut eyes of the weary. I almost ignored it, until I glanced at my side mirror. Headlights from a dark SUV cut across the rain, and behind it, a small shape was dragging. At first, my mind tried to explain it away. A trash bag, a tarp, something lifeless. But then the next flash of light stripped away every excuse. A Doberman pup, barely 3, maybe 4 months old, skin and bones. A rope cinched tight around its neck. Each jerk from the SUV slammed its body against the slick asphalt. The picture seared into my skull, ribs jutting under soaked fur, blood washing thin into the rainwater, legs kicking once, then folding, and the eyes, clouded, tired, but somewhere deep a thread of light still burned, like the last ember in a dying fire. My hands slipped on the wheel, wet with sweat. My whole body wound tight, a cable about to snap. I knew this was the turn my life would never forget. Either I drove on, like I had once before, and lived with the ghost of it forever, or I stopped, right now. I hit the accelerator. The rig roared, shaking from the force. My palm slammed the horn, the sound so deep it rattled my chest. The speedometer climbed, water exploded under the tires. I swerved, swinging the cab across both lanes, forcing the SUV into a screeching halt, brakes shrieking on the oil-slick pavement. The truck groaned as the air brakes sighed. I shoved the door open. Wind and rain lashed my face, sharp with the stink of oil and rust. I jumped down, boots splashing through black puddles, the night mountain air cutting straight through me. There it was, the pup. Chest heaving too fast, legs trembling. The rope had bitten deep, raw flesh gaping through wet fur. I dropped to my knees, denim soaking through. Its eyes lifted, clouded, but fixed on mine. Not fighting, just pleading. I reached out, whispering, my voice breaking inside the storm. You're safe now. It's over. Its head shifted, pressing weakly into my palm. Fragile, trusting. My chest locked tight. My fingers dug at the knot. The rope, swollen and slick, clung like it meant to stay forever. I clawed at it, nails tearing, skin split by the fibers. Rain ran cold down my neck. Through the glass of the SUV, I saw him. The driver, face pale, eyes hollow. No fear, no regret, just emptiness. He didn't need to speak. I already knew. For him, death was nothing more than routine. I twisted, forced, pulled, then snap. A faint pop. The knot gave. The rope fell heavy into the puddle, lifeless as a body thrown aside. The pup didn't run. It couldn't. It only lifted its head again, pressing closer into my hand. Its breath, hot, broken, shook against my skin like a vow unspoken. If you save me, I won't let go. And in that moment, the storm on I-70 went silent. Just me. A broken life in my hands. And a choice that had already rewritten everything. I lifted him, and only then, with his fragile body cradled in my arms, did I realize just how light he was. Not the lightness of a healthy life, but the hollow weight of bones wrapped in wet fur. A weight so slight it pressed heavier on me than any load I'd ever hauled. I swung the cab door open, warmth and diesel filling the air. I laid him on the passenger seat, threw the rope to the floor, and ground my boot over it as if I could bury it then and there. His breaths came ragged, each one a rasp that echoed inside the cab, but they were still there. I cranked the heat, wrapped my jacket around his trembling frame. Headlights from the SUV flickered once, then faded back into the storm. I didn't chase. That man dissolved into the dark like a nightmare receding in the rear view. I had only one road left. Forward. "Hang on, kid. Just a little longer," I whispered, keeping my hand firm on his back. His heartbeat rattled under my palm, erratic, weak, like a bird's wing caught in a fist. Every pothole sent his body shuddering. His eyes cracked open, tethering me to him with the thinnest thread of life. A thought sliced in. What if the clinic's closed? My answer came just as fast. Then break the door. Tonight, no law outweighed a single beating heart. Through the sheets of rain, a glow appeared. Silver Creek Station, its neon sign sputtering. I cut the wheel, slammed the brakes, and the rig shuddered to a stop inches from the glass storefront. Inside, a middle-aged man jerked upright from his counter, his drowsiness vanishing the second his eyes fell on what I carried. "Is there a vet clinic around here?" My voice came out sharp, urgent, more command than question. 8 miles west. No, here it's Silver Creek Animal Clinic. But at this hour, they'll be open." I cut in. I wasn't asking. It was a fact. He studied me for a beat, then jabbed a finger at an old map pinned to the corkboard. I tore it down and left before another word could pass his lips. Back in the cab, I eased him onto the seat again. One hand gripped the wheel, the other anchored to his back, steadying his tiny body with each jolt. Rain swirled thick around us like smoke. I drove slower than fear urged me to, because every bump made him whimper. In my palm, I felt it. His warmth, faint, slipping, as though his life hung by a single thread. Every second was a race now. Finally, a white wooden sign loomed ahead, black paint dripping across it. Silver Creek Animal Clinic. The building itself squatted low, dark, like a house asleep in the storm. I leapt down, arms locked around him, and ran straight to the glass door. The first pound rattled the frame. Silence answered. I hit again, harder, shaking the pain. Then, a burst of light deep inside. A figure emerged. A woman in green scrubs, hair tied high, feet moving fast. "We're closed for the..." The words cut off the instant her eyes fell on the pup. Without another question, she unlocked the door, swung it wide. "Put him here." I laid him on the cold steel table, bracing myself so he wouldn't cry out. Her hands flew, quick but careful, checking gums, pulse, eyes, lingering on the rope burn carved raw into his neck. IV fluids now. Constriction wounds, possible fracture. Wait outside. The door shut, leaving me alone in the sterile hush of the waiting room. Antiseptic seeped through the air, mixing with the rain still clinging to my clothes. Beyond that door came the clang of metal trays, the rip of gauze, the low murmur of someone soothing a broken animal. I dropped into a plastic chair, palms open, rope marks still etched deep into my skin. My eyes closed, and memory surged back. Another night, years ago, another wreck, another life I told myself I couldn't stop for. My reasons had seemed solid then, but no reason survives when the image haunts you forever. Tonight I swore it would be different. Tonight I swore it would never happen again. I don't remember how long I sat on that cold plastic chair. The clock on the wall dragged its hands forward one heavy tick at a time, the rhythm blending with the rain hammering the tin roof into a bleak symphony. My eyes never left the thin strip of light spilling from the treatment room, the place where Ranger hovered between life and death. The rope marks still burned across my arm, raw reminders I couldn't shake. And the past pressed in, one night years ago, when I'd driven past a wreck and never stopped. I'd told myself I had to keep going, that someone else would help. But the image clung like a shadow, never loosening its grip. Tonight, I had chosen differently. The door swung open. Dr. Elena Park stepped out, sweat beading on her brow, latex gloves still clinging to her hands. She exhaled, her eyes locking on mine. He's stable. For now. But weak. You got him here just in time. My chest collapsed, as if I'd been holding one long breath for hours. Can I see him? She nodded and handed me a thin protective gown. Step lightly. Inside, the smell of antiseptic mingled with the hum of heat. On the steel table, Ranger lay curled, the wounds around his neck cleaned and wrapped in white gauze. An IV dripped slow and steady into his small leg, each drop holding his life as if time itself had been measured into liquid. I stepped closer, resting a hand on his back. His fur was still damp, his body still trembling, but under it I felt it, the faint beat of his heart. Still there, still fighting. His eyes blinked open, cloudy but searching until they found me. And when his head tilted, pressing weakly into my palm, I understood. He knew I was there. Elena's voice came softly from behind. He'll need days of rest. Antibiotics, careful monitoring. But if his spirit holds, his chances rise. I nodded. He's not alone anymore. And in that fragile moment, I caught a reflection of myself in Ranger's dim eyes. A man who once failed to save, now trying to mend what had been broken. I realized I wasn't just saving him. He was saving me, too, pulling me back from scars I had carried far too long. The night dragged slowly. I stayed by his side, never leaving the chair beside the table. I couldn't risk adding one more regret to my life. Outside, the rain eased, dripping steadily from the eaves. Inside, the heart monitor pulsed its steady beep, each sound like a knock on the door of hope. Around 4 a.m, Elena returned, her shoulders wrapped in a thin coat. She paused, surprise flickering in her eyes. You're still here? I only nodded. He made it through the night, she said, still weak but responding well. Warmth flooded through my chest. I had never been a man who believed in miracles, but in that moment I felt I was sitting in the middle of one. Elena, I said, voice firm, I'll cover every expense. And when he leaves this place, he's coming with me, however long it takes. Whatever it takes. Her gaze lingered, weighing whether my words were impulse or conviction. Then she smiled softly and nodded. In that case, he really is lucky. I turned back to Ranger. His eyes had closed again, his breathing steadier now, his head still tilted against my hand as if it were the only safe place in the world. And in that stillness, I felt something simple, something undeniable. The storm had passed, and with it, a quiet beginning had taken root. For both Ranger and for me. 2 days later, Ranger was cleared to leave the clinic, his neck and legs wrapped in white bandages. He was so light that when I lifted him into the cab, it felt like carrying a shadow. Yet, in those eyes, once clouded and dim, there flickered a new light. Small, fragile, but enough to spark something inside me I thought I'd lost. Faith. I pulled away from Silver Creek and stopped at a roadside market. A few cans of soft food, warm water, and an old cotton blanket. I set it all up on the passenger seat, shaping a corner of the cab into his own space. He sniffed, then nibbled slowly, hesitantly, as if afraid it might be stolen away. I rubbed his back. No one's taking it. You've got me now. We rolled westward, the endless road lined with fields, still heavy with rain. For the first time, that empty seat beside me didn't feel empty at all. And for the first time, my cargo wasn't just about deadlines. It was about guarding the fragile weight of a life, mile after mile. That afternoon, at a gas station on the edge of a small town, I was filling the tank when a kid, maybe 16, in a hoodie, stepped out of the store. He stopped dead when he saw Ranger curled in the cab. His eyes widened. "Sir, that dog, is that the one people posted about? The one someone tied to a bumper and dragged? My sister just shared it online." My heart dropped. "You're sure?" "Yes, sir. They say it's some guy from Ashford, known for hurting dogs. Everyone's scared of him, Ashford." The name hit like a tolling bell. I pressed for details, but the boy only shook his head. That's all he knew. He hurried off while I stood frozen. That night, I parked near a riverbank, the water black as ink under a moonless sky. Ranger sat beside me, eyes fixed on the faint glow of a distant barge. I laid a hand on his back, feeling the warmth slowly returning. But my mind circled the fragments. Ashford, a man who tortured dogs, and the hollow, lifeless eyes I had seen through the rain that night. The next day, at a rest stop in Missouri, I crossed paths with a middle-aged couple sitting at a wooden bench. Their gaze lingered on Ranger with a mix of pity and curiosity. The woman asked, "Such a beautiful dog." Where did he come from? I didn't hide it. Rainy night. Dragged on the highway. I forced the car to stop. The man straightened, voice heavy. "My brother's a deputy in Ashford. You should talk to him. There are things in that town nobody wants to say out loud." He scribbled a number for me. Ashford again. Always Ashford. Later, as Ranger dozed on the blanket, I called a deputy I knew back in Millbrook. I told him everything. The rescue, the boy, the couple. He sighed on the other end. "That name's Darren Cole. He's got a record, but nothing that ever stuck. Always wriggled free. Last we heard he was in Ashford, but he vanished after that highway incident." My grip on the wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. In the rear view, Ranger stirred, eyes opening just enough to meet mine, as if to ask, "Are we safe?" I laid my hand over him. "Yeah, we're together. No one's touching you again." But I knew the truth. Darren Cole was still out there, still free, still capable of finding another victim, or worse, coming back for Ranger. The thought needled into me, sharp and unrelenting. Nothing was finished yet. The days stretched on, each stop filled with cautious eyes scanning strangers. Ranger was stronger now, eating full meals, standing steadier, his gaze clearer. I, on the other hand, carried a different weight. Each glance at him pressed heavier than any freight I had ever hauled. One evening, parked in an empty lot outside Oklahoma, Ranger slept curled at my feet. I opened my notebook, staring at the number the man in Missouri had given me. I knew sooner or later the road would take me back to Ashford, not just to repay a debt from that storm, but to end something that should never have begun. To make certain Darren Cole would never lay hands on another living soul again. In the dark, I spoke it aloud, a vow to myself and to the pup breathing softly beside me. This road isn't finished. We're going all the way. The message came through from the deputy I knew in Millbrook. No new leads, but he's been spotted hanging around gas stations along Route 36. Route 36. The words struck like a fist on an empty drum. I was less than 100 miles away. No address, no promise. Just a fragile thread. But I knew. Sometimes, to close a story, you have to go back to the first page. I drove through fields of burning gold, wheat shimmering under the blaze of summer sun. Heat shimmered on the asphalt until it stung the eyes. In the passenger seat, Ranger sat taller now, head lifted, ears twitching at every sound beyond the glass. The wounds at his neck had sealed, leaving only a pale scar. I looked at him, then back to the road. "We're going to find him," I said, voice low, certain. He didn't understand the words, but he turned his gaze, deep and steady, reflecting the same resolve rising inside me. By noon, the road emptied into silence. A battered service station sagged into view, roof caved on one side, rust eating away at a crooked sign. On the oil-stained gravel sat a dark SUV, body dented, paint dull, and on its hood, Darren Cole. A cigarette glowing between his thin fingers, his eyes narrowed at the highway as if it belonged to him. Blood surged hot in my veins. Every shard of that storming night came back. The taillights blazing, the rope screeching, Ranger's pleading eyes. I could have driven on, but I hadn't, and that choice had led me here. I eased the rig into the lot, tires grinding gravel, dust curling upward. Ranger's ears shot up, his body taut as a bowstring. I swung the door open and stepped down. The air stank of old smoke and oil. Darren looked up, his lips twisting into a crooked grin. "Well, look who it is." Highway hero. His voice dragged, lazy, mocking. I stopped a few paces away, my own voice even and hard. "The dog lived." "Thought you should know." He shrugged, spat into the dirt. "Not mine anymore. So what?" That's the problem." We stood under the crushing heat, shadows long and tangled across the gravel, the tension stretched thin as a wire ready to snap. I felt no tremor in me, only a strange stillness, as though the world itself had paused to see what would happen next. "You been following me?" His head cocked, tone dripping with scorn. "I'm not following you. The road brought me here." His laugh was brittle, crackling like burning paper. "You think you're the first hero to try? That mutt was trash. You'll get tired too." The words cut deep, but they never reached my will. I clenched my teeth. "You're wrong." He flicked the cigarette away and stepped forward. The tension coiled tighter, seconds away from breaking. And then, the growl of an engine roared behind us. A police SUV barreled into the lot, wheels spitting dust. The door swung open, and a deputy stepped out, gaze sharp as steel. "Everything all right here?" I never took my eyes off Darren. "This man is under investigation for animal cruelty. I witnessed it. I have proof." The deputy's gaze shifted. "That true, Mr. Cole?" Darren's smirk spread oily and smooth. "He's making it up." Nothing happened. I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone, thumbed open the gallery. The screen lit up. Ranger's neck raw and bleeding, fur slick with rain, eyes glazed with exhaustion. I held it out. The deputy studied the images, long and quiet, before nodding once. "Darren Cole, you're coming with us." And in that instant, Darren's eyes changed. Gone was the swagger, the mockery. What remained was emptiness, an awareness that the balance had tipped. He turned, hands behind his back. The cuffs clicked shut, metal biting with the sound of an ending. I stood still, watching the patrol SUV roll out in a trail of dust. When I climbed back into the cab, Ranger had his front paws braced against the door, eyes locked on me. I set my hand gently on his head, sliding down his back, my voice low. "It's over. He'll never touch you again." I started the engine. We pulled off Route 36, the mirror filling only with haze and dust. My shoulders felt lighter. the weight at last shifting. Not a grand victory, not perfect justice, but enough. Enough to know that, for once, the road had stopped a man like him. Beside me, Ranger lowered his head onto my leg, breathing steadily, as if he understood. The nightmare had closed, and the road ahead, for the first time in years, was more than destinations and deadlines. It was a journey for two survivors, together. The western road opened under new sunlight. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders no longer carried stone. I knew justice was never a straight line, and Darren Cole might find a way to slip through the cracks again. But for now, he was cuffed and taken. And more than that, Ranger lay beside me, his head resting on my leg as if the passenger seat had never belonged to anyone else. The first day after Route 36, I noticed something different. Ranger no longer flinched when I reached for him. The scar around his neck lingered, a faint curve under the patch of new fur, but when I brushed a hand over it, he simply lifted his eyes to mine, steady, without fear. It was a sign. He was learning to trust, and so was I. We built a rhythm together. Each morning, when I swung open the cab door, Ranger was the first to leap down, nose twitching at the scent of open fields. His legs were still lean, but stronger every day. I let him circle the lot before climbing back into the truck. In each stride, I saw life returning. Stubborn, resilient. I changed too. I used to drive through the night, chasing delivery deadlines, falling asleep in the cab, letting the clock own me. Now I stopped earlier, choosing lots with patches of grass so Ranger could stretch and sniff the earth instead of pacing cold steel. I split my sandwiches, giving him the bigger share, and I realized the hollow loneliness that had once haunted my miles had been replaced by something quieter, deeper, companionship. Once, at a rest stop in Kansas, a man stood near my truck, studying Ranger before giving a small nod. Fine dog. Doesn't matter where he came from. He's home now. I only smiled. No need to tell the story. Ranger told it himself, with eyes that shone a little brighter every day. At night, we sat outside the cab. I leaned against the steps. Ranger pressed close, his head resting on my old boots. We watched the sun sink behind distant ridges. No words, just a silent understanding. We had both weathered a storm, and now we were learning how to breathe again. I remembered Silver Creek when I promised Doctor Elena I'd take care of him. Back then, I wasn't sure if I could keep it. A long-haul trucker with an unpredictable life. What business did I have raising a dog? But looking at Ranger now, I understood. I hadn't been given a choice. The storm on I-70 had already made it for me. It had handed me a duty I could never walk away from. One afternoon in Utah, I pulled over by a cliff that overlooked a wide valley. The dry wind carried the smell of wild grass. Ranger stood at my side, ears high, his black and tan coat rippling in the breeze. I set my hand on his head. He looked up, eyes bright, as if staring into a road far ahead. And in that moment, I knew. We were a team. It was no longer I who saved him. It was we who saved each other. I don't fool myself into thinking I'm a hero. I know too well I once drove past, once told myself I couldn't stop. But Ranger gave me a second chance to prove that the right choice, made at the right moment, can change not just a life, but a soul. As night fell, Ranger curled on the old blanket in the passenger seat. I reached over, laid a hand on his back. His breathing is steady. My heartbeat slows to match. I realized I was no longer the weary man chasing time. I was a man keeping a promise. And from now on, whatever road lay ahead, I would never travel it alone again. We left Utah on a rare, clear morning. The sky opened like a blank page, the the sun pouring gold across the highway, and Ranger sat upright in the passenger seat, head lifted, ears catching the wind. Looking at him, I understood. We had traveled far, not just in miles, but in every breath wrestled back from death. Each day I saw the change in him. From the trembling creature in the rain, he now ran steady on his legs, black and tan fur gleaming again in the sun, the scar on his neck fading beneath new growth. At dawn, he was the first to step out of the cab, nose full of fresh grass, eyes burning with curiosity. At dusk, he pressed close beside me, head resting against my leg, watching the horizon swallow the sun. I changed, too. The miles that once were nothing but numbers became milestones of rebirth. The day Ranger finished his meal, the day he stood in the sunlight without shaking, the night he slept straight through without fear. I lived each moment as if I were watching a slow miracle bloom in my hands. Once, at a gas station, a stranger admired him. "Fine dog." Must have been trained well, I only smiled. I didn't tell him this was the same pup dragged down the highway, that I had carried him out of the storm. I didn't need to. Ranger's eyes told that story now. Grateful, loyal, no longer desperate. One night in Nevada, I sat on the truck steps while Ranger curled at my boots. Town lights flickered in the distance. I stroked his back and whispered, "We've come a long way, kid." He opened his eyes, met mine. No words needed. I knew he understood. I never fooled myself into thinking I was a hero. I had passed by before. I had told myself I couldn't stop. I had let excuses feel like reasons, but the memory of that night haunted me, a silent accusation that never faded. On I-70, when I saw Ranger dragged through the rain, I knew I had two choices: keep driving as I once had, or stop and change everything. This time, I stopped. Ranger wasn't a miracle. He was proof. Proof that if given a chance, a life will find its way back. Proof that sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to turn away, and an entire future can be rewritten. I think about the drivers out there, who one night may hear a cry in the rain. I hope they remember this story, remember Ranger's eyes when he was bound, remember his gaze when I pulled the knot free. And I hope, when that moment comes, they stop. Maybe I'll never know how long Darren Cole will serve, or if justice will ever be complete. But I know this: he'll never get the chance to kill Ranger. And for me, that is enough. Crossing into Arizona, I parked beneath red cliffs glowing in the late sun. Ranger ran circles in the dirt, then returned to sit beside me, panting, eyes alive with fire. I set my hand on his head and squeezed gently. In that moment, I saw it all: darkness, rain, rope, and now, this light. I once drove past and didn't stop, but now I carry a vow. I will never turn away again. Not from Ranger, not from any life that needs me. If someone asks me what changed my life, I won't speak of freight, or miles, or even my past mistakes. I'll say, a puppy in the rain. And I believe each of us will face a night like that, a cry in the dark, a moment to choose. I chose to stop, and because of that, Ranger rides beside me today, head high, eyes bright, walking with me down a road that's never looked so open. If our story makes you pause, even for a moment, to think of those silent eyes waiting out there, I ask you to carry it in your heart. Because sometimes a single choice, to stop, to bend down, to reach out, can change a life forever. I've learned it doesn't take a grand miracle, just one human being refusing to turn away. That rainy night, I didn't abandon Ranger, and he saved the best part of me in return. If you believe every life no matter how small or voiceless, deserves a chance, please share this story. Somewhere out there, another driver, another passerby, might remember and stop in time. Leave a comment. I will not turn away, as a promise we share. Subscribe to the channel to walk with me and Ranger on new journeys, where every story isn't just about rescue, but about hope, humanity, and the bond between people and animals. Every share, every word you leave behind, isn't just support for this channel. It's a pledge that lives like Ranger's will no longer suffer in silence, no longer be abandoned in the rain.